She stood at the door of the house she'd helped them buy with $90,000 of her own money, only to hear her daughter-in-law point at the street and threaten to call 911 if she didn't leave immediately. Years of sacrifice. Every hard-earned dollar thrown back at her with a cold stare. But she didn't cry. She turned around, walked down the steps, and instead of calling someone to beg for entry, she called the Realtor. The battle to reclaim her dignity and her investment had begun, and this time, she wouldn't let anyone push her out of the house she'd helped build. My name is Marion Carter, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing on my son's doorstep being threatened with arrest. The October wind cut through my cardigan as I gripped the casserole dish I'd brought, still warm, filled with Lucas's favorite pot roast, the same recipe I'd made every Sunday for 40 years. "I said get out," Haley repeated, her voice sharp as broken glass, "or I'll call 911. My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway like a sentinel, her designer workout clothes pristine despite it being 4:30 in the afternoon. Behind her, I could see into the house. My house, really, considering I'd put down $90,000 in cash to help them buy it, the hardwood floors gleamed, the walls painted in that trendy gray she'd insisted on. Everything perfect, everything cold. "Haley, I just came to drop off dinner for Lucas. Is he—" He doesn't want to see you." Her manicured hand gripped the door frame, knuckles white. "We've discussed this. You're not welcome here anymore." I searched for my son's face in the shadows behind her, there, by the kitchen entrance, his shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor. My boy, the child I'd raised alone after his father's heart attack, wouldn't even look at me. "Lucas?" My voice cracked despite myself. "Lucas, honey, what's going on?" He shifted, opened his mouth, but Haley cut him off with a look that could freeze blood. "Lucas has nothing to say to you. You need to leave. Now." The casserole dish suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I set it carefully on the porch railing, my hands trembling not from age, but from something far worse. The realization that this wasn't a misunderstanding, this was deliberate, calculated. "This is about the money, isn't it?" The words came out steadier than I felt. "About me asking questions?" Haley's eyes narrowed. "I'm dialing." She pulled out her phone, those ridiculous acrylic nails clicking against the screen. 9-1. "I'm going." I held up my hands, took a step back. The wooden porch creaked under my feet. I'd told Lucas that needed fixing months ago, another thing they'd ignored. "But this isn't over." "Oh yes, it is." Haley's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "You signed the papers. The house is ours. You have no legal right to be here." Legal right. The words echoed in my head as I turned and walked down the steps I'd helped Lucas repair the summer they moved in. My Buick sat in the driveway behind their matching BMW's cars they somehow afforded on their salaries, cars that had appeared shortly after I'd asked about the unusual withdrawals from their joint account I'd noticed on a bank statement that had been mistakenly mailed to my address. I climbed into my car, my hands steady now. Fury had burned away the shock, leaving something harder, clearer. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, not to call the police, not to call Lucas. I called Travis Malone, the realtor who'd helped them buy this house, the one who'd warned me, quietly, about making sure my name was on the deed. "Travis, it's Marion Carter. Remember that conversation we had about protecting investments?" I watched Haley slam the door, the sound echoing across the suburban street. "I think it's time we had another talk." As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced at the pot roast cooling on the porch railing. Let them throw it away. I had bigger things to cook up now. And this time, I'd be serving papers instead of dinner. The drive home took me past Metro Fleet lines, where I'd spent 40 years of my life. The warehouse lights were coming on in the early dusk, trucks lined up like soldiers ready for their night runs. I'd started there as a dispatcher at 28, freshly widowed with a 10-year-old boy who needed braces, school supplies, and a mother who wouldn't fall apart. Tom had been gone just 6 months when I walked into that office, desperate for anything that paid more than minimum wage, the logistics manager, A gruff man named Bill Henley had looked at my resume, secretary at a dental office, 2 years of community college, and shook his head. But something made him give me a chance. Maybe it was the way I'd calculated shipping routes in my head during the interview, or how I'd spotted an error in their sample documentation. "You've got a mind for details," he'd said. "That's what we need here." 40 years. 40 years of getting up at 4:30 in the morning, managing routes, handling difficult drivers, negotiating with suppliers. 40 years of overtime, weekend shifts, taking calls at midnight when trucks broke down in the middle of nowhere. I'd worked through stomach flu, through Lucas's chicken pox, through my own mother's funeral. Every dollar saved went into Lucas's college fund. Then later, when he decided college wasn't for him, into a savings account I'd earmarked for his future. The life insurance payout from Tom's death, $75,000, had gone straight into CDs and bonds, untouched for decades. I'd lived on tuna sandwiches and drove the same car for 15 years. Also, my boy would have something. When Lucas met Haley 5 years ago, I'd been thrilled. He was 35, had been drifting from job to job, and suddenly here was this bright, ambitious woman who seemed to adore him. She worked in medical billing. He said she had plans, dreams. She made him want to be better. The wedding was small but elegant. Haley had insisted on the country club, though I noticed I was the one writing the check. "Just this once, Mom," Lucas had said, his eyes pleading. "Haley's family is complicated. This means so much to her." Complicated turned out to mean non-existent. No one from her side attended, except a cousin who left early. But I'd pushed aside my doubts when they started house hunting. Lucas called me, breathless with excitement. "Mom, we found it. The perfect place. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Great school district for when we have kids." "That's wonderful. Honey, what's the asking price?" $425. "But Mom, the market's crazy right now. We need to move fast. And the down payment?" "Of course. The down payment, 20% to avoid PMI $85,000, plus closing costs." I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night, running the numbers, my retirement account, the life insurance money that had grown over the years, my savings. I could do it. I could give my son the stability I'd never had. But I wasn't completely naive. The next morning, I'd called my friend Janet's daughter, who worked in real estate law. "If I'm putting down this kind of money," I'd asked, "how do I protect myself?" "Family mortgage," she'd said without hesitation. "Record a deed of trust. Make sure you're listed as a lien holder. Get everything in writing." I'd brought it up carefully with Lucas and Haley over dinner. "It's just paperwork," I'd explained, "to make everything official. Protect all of us." Haley's face had gone tight, but Lucas had nodded. "Of course. Mom, whatever makes you comfortable. We're family." Family. The word tasted bitter now as I pulled into my own driveway. The small ranch house looked even smaller after being at Lucas's place, but it was paid for. Every nail and shingle. I'd raised my boy here, in these 3 rooms, teaching him about hard work and honesty. I went straight to my filing cabinet, pulled out the folder marked Lucas House. There it was, the family mortgage, properly notarized and recorded. Haley's signature next to Lucas's, dated 3 years ago. My $90,000, secured by the property at 47 Maple Grove Lane. Below that, bank statements showing regular payments for the first year, then sporadic ones, then nothing for the past 8 months. I'd asked Lucas about it once, gently. "Oh, we switched to automatic payments." He'd said, "Different account, don't worry about it. Mom, don't worry about it." The last words he'd said to me before today. 2 weeks ago on the phone, I'd called about Thanksgiving plans, and he'd been distant, distracted. "We might go to Haley's family," he'd said, "the family that didn't exist." I spread the papers across my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped Lucas with his homework, where we'd eaten countless silent dinners after Tom died, where I'd signed over my life savings to give him a future. Tomorrow, I'd call Sandra Keene, the best real estate attorney in the county, Tonight, I'd organize every receipt, every document, every piece of evidence that showed what I'd built and what they'd stolen. They wanted me out? Fine, but I'd be taking what was mine with me. The first sign of trouble had come 6 months ago, though I'd been too blind to see it. My neighbor, Dorothy, had mentioned it casually over the fence while I was pruning my roses. Saw Lucas and Haley at the Bahamas resort last month. She'd said, "Jim and I were there for our anniversary. Small world, isn't it?" I'd smiled, confused. "You must be mistaken. They were visiting Haley's sick aunt in Cleveland that week." Dorothy had given me a strange look but didn't press. Now I understood that look, pity, mixed with the awkwardness of knowing something you shouldn't. The signs multiplied after that. New furniture appearing in photos Haley posted on social media. The kitchen renovation they'd mentioned but never asked for help with. Lucas's new watch, a Tag Heuer that cost more than I'd made in a month at Metrofleet. Haley got a bonus. He'd explained when I'd noticed it at his birthday dinner. But it was Margaret from church who finally opened my eyes. She worked at First National, had for 30 years, and while she'd never breached confidentiality, she had ways of warning people. "Marion," she'd said after service one Sunday, "you know I can't discuss bank business, but if I were you, I'd check that all your mail is coming to the right address. Identity theft is such a problem these days." That afternoon, I'd called the bank to verify my mailing addresses. Everything was correct for my accounts, but the helpful customer service representative mentioned something odd. "I see here you're also listed on another property, 47 Maple Grove Lane. Would you like statements for that account as well?" "What account?" "The home equity line of credit, opened 4 months ago." My hands had gone cold. "How much?" "I'm showing a credit line of $75,000 with $62,000 currently drawn." I'd hung up and driven straight to the bank. Margaret couldn't tell me much, but she'd printed out what she could, public records showing a HELOC on the property, opened without my knowledge or signature. "How is this possible?" I'd asked. "I'm on the deed. I have a recorded mortgage." Margaret had looked around, then leaned in. "Sometimes people forge signatures. Honey, sometimes family members take advantage. You need a lawyer, a good one." That night, I'd called Lucas, trying to keep my voice calm. "Honey, I got some confusing paperwork from the bank. Something about a home equity loan." The silence on the other end stretched too long. "Oh, yeah, we needed some repairs done. Foundation issues. Didn't want to worry you." $62,000 in foundation repairs? "It's complicated. Mom, Haley's handling it. You know I'm not good with that stuff." Haley's handling it. Like Haley handled their finances, their plans, their life. Like she was handling pushing me out of their lives now that she'd gotten what she needed. I'd started documenting everything after that. Screenshots of their social media, trips to Cabo, Vegas, Miami, pictures of new cars, jewelry, electronics, credit card offers that still occasionally came to my house for Lucas, showing available balances that made my stomach turn. They were drowning in debt, using the house I'd helped buy as their personal ATM. The final straw came last week, a letter from the bank, mistakenly delivered to my address again, default notice on the HELOC, 3 months behind on payments. I'd read it twice, my hands shaking. Not only had they stolen from me, they were about to lose everything. I'd tried calling Lucas repeatedly, voicemail. Texts went unread. Finally, I decided to drive over, to force a conversation, which brought me to today, standing on that porch like a beggar at the house I'd paid for, being threatened by a woman who wore my sacrifices like designer clothes. But Haley had made one mistake. She'd said I had no legal right to be there. She was wrong. That family mortgage gave me more than rights. It gave me power. First position lien holder status, my lawyer friend had called it. In any foreclosure or sale, I got paid first, before the HELOC, before any other creditors. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of the default notice before trying to return it to Lucas. Evidence, documentation, proof. Tomorrow, I'd also call the district attorney's office. Forging signatures on a financial document was a felony in this state. Haley thought she was so smart, thought she'd covered her tracks, but I'd spent 40 years catching discrepancies in shipping manifests, finding lost packages in a network of thousands. Finding the truth about a forged signature would be child's play. They wanted to threaten me with 911? Wait until they met the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, because I wasn't just some elderly mother they could push around. I was Marion Carter, and I'd survived worse than a greedy daughter-in-law with a shopping addiction. The war hadn't started today on that porch. It had started months ago when they'd decided I was nothing more than a bank account to drain. Today was just when I'd finally shown up to fight. The law offices of Keene and Associates occupied the top floor of the newest building downtown. I arrived at 8:45 sharp Tuesday morning, my documented evidence organized in a leather portfolio that had seen me through decades of business meetings. Sandra Keene herself met me in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper reputation. "Mrs. Carter," she said, leading me to her office. "Travis Malone called ahead, said you have a property situation that needs immediate attention." I laid out everything on her mahogany conference table: the original purchase documents, the family mortgage, the bank statements, the HELOC paperwork showing the forged signature, the default notice. Sandra examined each document with the intensity of a surgeon, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. "This is fraud," she said finally, "clear cut. But I'm more interested in your immediate remedy. This default notice, they're 90 days behind. The bank will move to foreclose soon." "Can they do that with my mortgage in place?" Sandra smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "They can try, but your family mortgage is in first position, recorded 3 years ago, before any HELOC. You're owed $90,000 plus interest. Any foreclosure sale would have to satisfy your lien first." She pulled out a calculator. "At 5% interest, compounded annually, you're owed approximately $104,000 today." "What about the HELOC?" "Secondary position. In a foreclosure, they'd only get what's left after you're paid, based on current market values." She pulled up something on her computer. "The house is worth approximately $450,000, minus your $104,000, minus sale costs. The HELOC might recover 70% of what's owed. Maybe." "So what do I do?" Sandra leaned back. "You have options. 1. Wait for the foreclosure and ensure you're paid first. 2. File for judicial foreclosure yourself based on their default to you. 3, and this is what I recommend, file for partition sale." Partition sale? "You're effectively a co-owner through your secured interest. You can force a sale of the property, take your share, and let them figure out the rest. It's faster than foreclosure and puts you in control." I thought of Haley's sneer, Lucas's cowardice. "Do it." Sandra nodded. "I'll also recommend we file a lis pendens immediately. That's a public notice that there's a legal claim on the property. It'll prevent them from selling or refinancing without settling with you first." "What about the forgery?" "I have a colleague who handles criminal matters. We can pursue that parallel to the civil case. But Marion, I need you to understand something. This will destroy your relationship with your son." I looked out her window at the city below, the same city where I'd raised Lucas alone, sacrificed everything for his future. That relationship ended when he stood silent, while his wife threatened to have me arrested for trying to visit the house I paid for. Sandra made more notes. "I'll need a retainer, $5,000 to start." I wrote the check without hesitation. It was worth every penny to see justice done. "One more thing," Sandra added. "They'll likely try to negotiate once they're served. Cry, beg, make promises. Are you prepared for that?" I spent 40 years negotiating with truckers and warehouse managers. I think I can handle my son and his wife. That afternoon, Travis Malone met me at a coffee shop downtown. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "Marion, I want to help, but I need to know, are you sure about this? Once we start the sale process, it's hard to stop." "Travis, they took out a fraudulent loan against my investment and haven't made payments to me in 8 months. They're in default to the bank. If I don't act now, I lose everything." He nodded slowly. The partition sale will take about 90 days once filed. I can have the property on the market within a week of court approval. In this market, it'll sell fast. Good. And Travis? I want a sign in the yard. A big one. Let the whole neighborhood know it's for sale. He raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive. So is threatening to call the police on your mother-in-law. Travis pulled out his tablet, started making notes. I'll need interior photos for the listing, full staging consultation, the works. They won't let you in. They will once the court orders it. Partition sale includes right of access for valuation and marketing. He looked up. Marion, based on recent comps, I think we can get $470, maybe $480 for the property. After your lien is satisfied and sales costs covered, they'd walk away with maybe $200,000, enough to pay off the HELOC and have something left over. That's generous of you to think of them. Travis shrugged. I'm thinking of everyone. This doesn't have to end in complete destruction. But he was wrong. Destruction was exactly what Haley had chosen when she'd forged my signature, when she'd stolen from the woman who'd given them everything, when she'd stood in that doorway and threatened me. I finished my coffee and stood. File everything as soon as Sandra gives you the go-ahead. And Travis, make sure that sign is visible from the street. I want everyone driving by to see it. Because Haley had been right about one thing. This was over. But not the way she thought. It was over for them, not me. And by the time I was done, they'd understand exactly who they'd tried to push around. The meek might inherit the earth, but the documented inherit the house. The call came at 7:15 on Thursday evening. I was making dinner, a simple salad. Eating alone as I'd done most nights since Tom died. Lucas's number on my phone screen made my hand pause before answering. Mom? His voice sounded strained. We need to talk. Can you come over? Am I going to be threatened with arrest again? No, Mom, please. Haley's sorry about that. We need to talk. Please. I could have said no. Should have. According to Sandra's advice. But some part of me, the mother who'd kissed, scraped knees, and checked for monsters under the bed, needed to face them one more time. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. And Lucas? This conversation happens at the kitchen table with all the lights on. No ambushes. The drive felt longer than usual. I'd made this trip hundreds of times, bringing groceries when Lucas was between jobs, helping with yard work, dropping off Christmas presents. Now I was arriving with a folder of legal documents that would end their life as they knew it. Haley opened the door before I could knock. Her usually perfect appearance was cracked, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a messy bun. Marion, she said, stepping aside, thank you for coming. The house smelled like stress and stale coffee. Lucas sat at the kitchen table, papers spread before him. My papers, the legal notices Sandra had filed, the list pendants, the partition action. His hands shook as he pushed them around. Mom, he started, then stopped. Tried again. Mom, what are you doing to us? I sat down across from them, keeping my folder closed. I'm protecting my investment. The question is, what did you do to me? Haley sank into a chair. It was supposed to be temporary. The loan. We were going to pay it back. With what? More forged documents? More lies? Why? It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Lucas said. Haley's job, they cut her hours. And my contractor position ended. We just needed something to tide us over. $62,000 to tide you over? The trips to Cabo? The new cars? Haley's face flushed. You don't understand the pressure we're under. Everyone our age has nice things. We work hard. We deserve. You deserve what you earn. I cut her off. Not what you steal. Steal? Lucas's voice cracked. Mom, we're family. It's not stealing. I finally opened my folder, pulled out the HELOC signature page. Is this my signature? Lucas? He couldn't meet my eyes. Haley said, she said you'd never notice, that the house had enough equity. Haley said, I turned to my daughter-in-law. Haley says a lot of things, like telling the neighbors you're visiting your sick aunt when you're really in the Bahamas. You've been spying on us? Haley's indignation might have been convincing if I hadn't seen the fear underneath. No, people talk when they see someone being taken advantage of. I pulled out more papers. Default notices. 3 months behind on the HELOC. 8 months since you've made a payment on the family mortgage. Were you planning to tell me before the bank foreclosed? We were handling it, Haley insisted. I've been negotiating with the bank. Negotiating? Is that what you call ignoring their letters? Lucas finally looked up, and I saw the boy I'd raised buried under the weight of bad decisions. Mom, please, call off the lawyers. We'll pay you back. We'll set up a payment plan. We'll sell the house, I finished. Yes, you will, through a court-ordered partition sale. You can't do this. Haley stood, her chair scraping against the floor. This is our home. We have rights. Yes, you do. You have the right to hire your own lawyer. You have the right to contest the partition. You have the right to explain to a judge how your signature ended up on loan documents. Would you like to discuss those rights? She sank back down, deflated. Mom, Lucas whispered, I'm your son, your only child. How can you do this to me? The words hit exactly where he'd aimed them. I felt the familiar guilt, the pull to give in, to make it better. But then I remembered standing on that porch, being threatened by the woman across from me while my son did nothing. How could you do this to me? I countered. 40 years, Lucas, 40 years of sacrifice. I wore the same coat for a decade so you could have new school clothes. I drove a 15-year-old car so you could go on field trips. I gave you everything. And you let her, I pointed at Haley, turn it into shopping sprees and vacation photos. Don't blame this on me, Haley snapped. Lucas knew everything. He signed everything. And there it was, the first crack in their united front. I watched Lucas turn to his wife, saw the betrayal in his eyes. You said Mom had agreed, he said slowly. You said you'd talk to her. Oh, grow up, Lucas, Haley shot back. You knew. You didn't want to know, but you knew. I stood, gathering my papers. Sandra Keene will be in touch. The house goes on the market next week. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live. Mom, wait. Lucas reached for me, but I stepped back. The time for waiting is over. You made your choice when you let her threaten me, when you stayed silent, when you stole from me. I moved toward the door. I'll make this simple for you. Cooperate with the sale, and you might walk away with enough to start over. Fight me, and I'll pursue the criminal charges for forgery. Your choice. I left them there in their beautiful kitchen, in their perfect house built on lies and my money. Outside, the night air felt clean, sharp. I sat in my car for a moment, waiting for the guilt to overwhelm me. It didn't come. For the first time in months, I felt clear. They'd pushed me out, and now I was pushing back. With compound interest, the for sale sign went up on Tuesday morning at 9 sharp. Travis had kept his word. It was large, professional, and impossible to miss from the street. By 10, my phone was ringing. Mom, how could you? Lucas's voice was raw. The neighbors are already asking questions. Haley's humiliated. Then Haley should have thought about that before committing fraud, I replied. Watching from my car parked down the street, I'd wanted to see the sign go up myself, wanted to witness the first visible consequence of their actions. Please, take it down. We'll figure something out. Just take down the sign. The court ordered it. Lucas, it's out of my hands now. That was partially true. The court had approved the partition sale, but the sign's size and placement had been my specific request. Travis emerged from the house with his photographer, and I watched Haley follow them, gesticulating wildly. By Thursday, Sandra called with an update. The bank's been notified of our action. They're freezing the HELOC immediately. No more draws on the credit line. What does that mean for Lucas and Haley? It means the party's over. Also, I heard from Haley's attorney. She's hired someone, not a very good someone, but someone. They're requesting mediation. No mediation. We proceed as planned. That's what I told them. Oh, and Marion? The criminal investigation is moving forward. The DA's office is very interested in the forged signature. Apparently, this isn't Haley's first rodeo with financial irregularities. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I can't share details, but let's just say your daughter-in-law has a history. Nothing prosecuted, but several civil matters settled quietly. You might want to check your own credit report. That afternoon, I pulled my credit report for the first time in years. 3 credit cards I'd never opened, all maxed out, all showing my son's address. Total debt, $38,000. The oldest was from 2 years ago, before I'd even helped with the house. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the evidence of a betrayal that ran deeper than I'd imagined. This wasn't desperation. This was deliberate, systematic theft by someone who'd looked me in the eye at family dinners and smiled. Friday brought Travis back to my door with more news. We've had 7 showings already, 2 offers coming in this weekend. The market's hot for that neighborhood. Any problems with access? Haley tried to block the first showing, said she needed 24 hours notice. I reminded her the court order specifies 2 hours. He paused. She's not handling this well. Marion, yesterday she told one couple the house had foundation problems. Does it? Inspector says it's solid as a rock. She's getting desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. That night, Dorothy called. Marion, I don't want to worry you, but I saw Lucas loading boxes into a U-Haul. Looked like they were moving out in the middle of the night. I called Sandra immediately. Can they do that? Just leave? They can leave, but they can't hide. The house is collateral. If they abandon it, we accelerate the sale. Actually makes our job easier. No tenants to evict. But something felt wrong. The next morning, I drove past the house. The U-Haul was gone, but cars still filled the driveway. Through the window, I could see movement. Then I understood. They weren't moving out. They were moving things out. Valuables. Anything not nailed down that could be sold. I called Travis. Get over there with your photographer. Document everything. Every room, every missing fixture. On it, I'll also call the locksmith. Once they vacate, we secure the property. By afternoon, Sandra had filed an emergency motion for asset preservation. Judge isn't happy, she reported. Removing fixtures and appliances during a court-ordered sale? That's contempt. The weekend brought silence from Lucas and Haley, but plenty of noise from the real estate market. Travis called Sunday evening, excitement in his voice. Bidding war. We're up to $495. Cash offer, quick close. Take it. Don't you want to wait, see if it goes higher? No, I want this done. That night, I found myself looking through old photos. Lucas at 5, missing his front teeth. At 10, proudly showing off his baseball trophy. At 18, graduation cap slightly crooked. When had that sweet boy become someone who could stand silent while his wife threatened his mother? When had he chosen designer watches over dignity? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but I recognized the writing style immediately. Haley. You're destroying your own son. What kind of mother does that? You'll die alone and unloved. No one will mourn you. I saved the text, forwarded it to Sandra, then blocked the number. Haley was wrong. I wasn't destroying Lucas. He'd done that himself when he chose greed over gratitude. I was just cleaning up the mess, the way I'd always done. The sign in the yard now read, "Sale pending." In a few weeks, it would all be over. The house would belong to strangers. Lucas and Haley would be someone else's problem, and I'd have my money back. But I'd lost my son long before any of this started. I'd lost him the day he decided I was worth more as a bank account than as a mother. The partition sale was just making it official. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor wax, the same as it had 30 years ago when I'd come here to probate Tom's will. Now I was back, sitting on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom 3, waiting for our case to be called. Sandra sat beside me, reviewing her notes one final time. Remember, let me do the talking. Answer the judge's questions directly if asked, but don't volunteer information. I've testified in depositions before, I reminded her. Metro Fleet had its share of lawsuits. This is different. This is personal. She was right. Through the narrow window in the courtroom door, I could see Lucas and Haley at the defendant's table. He wore the suit I'd bought him for job interviews. She'd chosen a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, playing the part of the wronged homeowner, their attorney. A nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers sat between them. "Carter versus Carter," the bailiff called. We filed in, taking our places. I avoided looking at Lucas, focused instead on the judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Your Honor," Sandra began after the preliminaries, "this is a straightforward partition action. My client, Marion Carter, holds a properly recorded family mortgage for $90,000 on the property in question. The defendants have defaulted on their obligations and have admitted to fraudulently obtaining a HELOC against the property without my client's knowledge or consent." The judge reviewed the documents. "I see the property is already under contract." "Yes, Your Honor, for $495,000. We're here to finalize the distribution of proceeds." Haley's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my clients contest the validity of the family mortgage. They claim it was meant as a gift, not a loan." The judge's eyebrows rose. "A gift? Is there documentation of this gift?" "Well, no, but—" "Then we'll proceed with the documented mortgage." She turned to our table. "Mrs. Carter, is it true you contributed $90,000 toward the purchase of this property?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor, my entire life savings." "And you had a written agreement for repayment?" "Yes, Your Honor, notarized and recorded with the county." The judge nodded, then addressed Lucas and Haley. "And the HELOC? How was that obtained without Mrs. Carter's signature?" Their attorney stammered. "My clients believed they had implicit permission." "Implicit permission?" The judge's voice could have frozen fire. "Mr. Carter, did your mother give you permission to forge her signature?" Lucas stood slowly, for the first time since this began. He looked directly at me. "No, Your Honor." Mrs. Carter, did you—" "She set us up," Haley burst out, jumping to her feet. "She knew we needed money, and she refused to help. She forced us to—" "Sit down," the judge commanded. "No one forced you to commit fraud, Mrs. Carter." Haley sat, her face flushed with rage. The judge continued reviewing documents. "I see here that fixtures and appliances were removed from the property during the sale process." "They were ours," Haley muttered. "They were part of the real property under partition," the judge corrected. "That's theft. Mrs. Carter, be grateful criminal charges haven't been filed for that as well." She paused. "Though I see fraud charges are pending regarding the forged signature?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sandra confirmed. "The district attorney is pursuing that separately." The judge made notes, then looked up. "Here's my ruling. The sale will proceed as scheduled. From the proceeds, the following distributions will be made. First, all standard closing costs and real estate commissions. Second, full satisfaction of Mrs. Marion Carter's family mortgage, including principal of $90,000 plus accrued interest at 5% annually, totaling approximately $104,000. Third, attorney fees for Mrs. Marion Carter in the amount of—" She glanced at Sandra's documentation. $12,000. Fourth, reimbursement to Mrs. Marion Carter for fraudulent credit cards opened in her name, totaling $38,000. "What?" Lucas's head snapped toward Haley. "What credit cards?" The judge continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Fifth, penalties for removal of fixtures, estimated at $8,000. The remaining proceeds, after satisfaction of the HELOC, will be distributed to Lucas and Haley Carter." She calculated quickly. "That leaves approximately $40,000, assuming the HELOC payoff is accurate." "40,000?" Haley's voice was shrill. "That's all? From a $500,000 house?" "You're fortunate it's that much," the judge replied coldly. "Any party who wishes to appeal has 30 days to file. However, given the clear documentation and admitted fraud, I wouldn't recommend it." She banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." I stood on shaking legs. It was over. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been served with compound interest. As we gathered our papers, Lucas approached. Sandra stepped between us, but I touched her arm. "It's okay." "Mom," he said, his voice broken, "I didn't know about the credit cards. I didn't know how far she'd—" Yes, you did, I said quietly. You knew enough. You chose not to see the rest. I loved her. Mom, I thought she loved me. She loved what you could provide, what I could provide through you. I picked up my purse. The house closes in 2 weeks. After that, please don't contact me. Mom, please. But I was already walking away. Sandra at my side, behind us. I could hear Haley starting to berate Lucas, her voice echoing off the marble walls. Something about this being his fault, his mother's fault, everyone's fault but hers. Outside, the sun felt warm on my face. You did well in there, Sandra said. I did what needed doing. I look back at the courthouse. What happens to them now? With 40,000 in criminal charges pending, my guess is Haley disappears and Lucas moves back in with a friend, maybe gets his life together, maybe doesn't. And if he tries to contact me? Sandra smiled grimly. That's what restraining orders are for. But I didn't think I'd need one. The look in Lucas's eyes hadn't been anger or defiance. It had been shame. And shame, I'd learned, was more effective than any court order at keeping people away. The closing took place on a crisp Wednesday morning at 9 at the title company's office. I arrived early, wanting everything settled before Lucas and Haley showed up. But they never came. They signed everything yesterday, the closing agent explained, sliding papers across the desk. Separate appointment. Their attorney said they preferred it that way. I understood. The shame was complete now. Too heavy to bear in person. I signed where indicated, my hand steady as I wrote my name over and over, the same signature Haley had tried to forge, now putting an end to her schemes. The wire transfer hit my account at 11:47, $162,000. My original $90,000, plus interest, plus damages, plus justice. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the bank app on my phone. It wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about respect, about not being pushed aside like yesterday's newspaper. Travis called that afternoon. The new owners are thrilled. They'll move in next week. He paused. I heard Lucas and Haley split up. She left town before the criminal charges were filed. And Lucas? Staying with a friend in Riverside, working at a warehouse, from what I hear. A warehouse, like where I'd started, all those years ago. Maybe he'd learn what I'd tried to teach him, that honest work wasn't shameful, that earning your way meant something. That evening, I stood in my small kitchen, making dinner for one as I'd done thousands of times before, but tonight felt different. The weight I'd carried for months was gone. The second mortgage on my heart had been paid off, foreclosed on, sold to the highest bidder. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost didn't read it, assuming it was Haley from a new phone, but I looked. Mrs. Carter, this is Jake Morrison from Lucas's high school. I heard about what happened. I just wanted to say Lucas was lucky to have a mom like you. You taught us all about standing up for ourselves. Hope you're doing well. I smiled, remembering Jake, a skinny kid who'd practically lived at our house senior year, eating everything in sight. He was a prosecutor now, according to Dorothy. Maybe some lessons had stuck after all. The next morning, I met Sandra for coffee to settle the final billing. You know, she said, stirring her latte, in 20 years of practice, I've never seen someone handle a family betrayal with such grace. Most people either fold completely or go scorched earth. You found the middle ground. I did what needed doing, I said, my standard response. No, Sandra disagreed. You did what was right, there's a difference. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Lucas's handwriting on the envelope made my chest tighten, but I opened it. Mom, I know you said not to contact you, so I'm only writing this once. I'm sorry. Not just for the house or the money, but for the man I became, for choosing her over you, for staying silent when I should have spoken up. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand how I got so lost, how I convinced myself that things mattered more than people. That image mattered more than integrity. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I remember who you raised me to be, and I'm trying to find my way back to that person. I love you, Lucas. I read it twice, then placed it in my filing cabinet next to the closing documents. Maybe someday I'd answer. Maybe someday the boy I'd raised would fully emerge from the wreckage of the man he'd become. But not today. Today was for me. I drove past the house on Maple Grove one last time. New curtains already hung in the windows, children's toys scattered across the lawn, a young couple building their life in what had been meant as my legacy to Lucas. It was better this way. That house had been poisoned by greed and lies. Let it be cleansed by new dreams, honest ones. At home, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Cruises to Alaska, tours of Europe, all the trips I'd never taken because I was saving for Lucas's future. Well, I'd given him his future, and he'd squandered it. Now it was my turn. The travel agent was enthusiastic. "Mrs. Carter, with your budget, we can book you first-class everything. You've earned it." Yes, I had earned it with 40 years of work, with sacrifice, with standing up to betrayal instead of lying down beneath it. I'd earned every penny, every moment of peace, every mile I'd travel. I booked a 2-week cruise to Alaska, departing in a month, first class, balcony suite. When the confirmation came through, I felt lighter than I had in years. That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Marion Carter?" A woman's voice, nervous. "Yes?" "My name is Jennifer. I was married to Haley's brother. I wanted to warn you, she's done this before, to her own parents. Forged their signatures, took out loans, they lost their house. I just wanted you to know you did the right thing." Someone finally stopped her. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness thinking about patterns, about lessons learned and ignored, about the difference between justice and revenge. I hadn't destroyed my son. I'd simply refused to let him destroy me. The stars came out, bright and clear. Tomorrow I'd start planning what to pack for Alaska. Tonight, I'd sit here on my porch, in front of my paid-off house, with my recovered money in the bank and my dignity intact. I'd won, not because I'd hurt them, but because I'd protected myself, because I'd proven that being generous didn't mean being weak, because I'd shown that love without respect is just exploitation waiting to happen. And somewhere out there, maybe Lucas was learning that too. Maybe he was discovering what I'd known all along, that the things that matter can't be bought with stolen money or forged signatures. They have to be earned, one honest day at a time. I went inside, locked my door, and slept better than I had in years. The war was over. I'd won it with documents and determination, with law and leverage. But most of all, I'd won it by remembering who I was. Marion Carter, who'd raised a son alone, who'd worked 40 years without complaint, who'd given everything and asked only for respect in return. And when that respect was denied, well, I'd taken it back, with interest. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Please comment below and let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about what you would have done in my situation. Your comments mean the world to me, and I love connecting with all of you who understand that sometimes the hardest battles are with the people we love most.